Everyone told me moving to Thailand alone at 66 was the stupidest thing I'd ever do. 3 months later, I stopped caring what everyone thought. But I want to be honest with you. Those first 3 months were not easy. There were nights I lay in an unfamiliar bed, in an unfamiliar city, staring at a ceiling fan and genuinely asking myself if I'd lost my mind. There were mornings I sat in a small cafe, surrounded by Thai conversations I couldn't understand, and felt more alone than I had in 20 years. There were moments, specific, quiet, embarrassing moments where I almost bought a flight home. I didn't. And what happened after those moments is the reason I'm sitting here making this video. My name is James Kowalski. I'm 66 years old. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I spent 34 years as a high school history teacher, raised 2 sons mostly on my own after my wife passed in 2009, and retired in the spring of last year with a Social Security check, a modest savings account, and absolutely nothing waiting for me at home. No plan, no person, no reason to stay, and no particular reason to go except one. I'd been watching videos about Thailand for 2 years, and one Tuesday morning in October I stopped watching and bought the ticket. This is what happened next. Let me tell you about the life I left, not to make it sound bad. It wasn't bad. It was just, let me say, finished. Cincinnati, Ohio, same house for 22 years. Same neighborhood, same grocery store, same drive to school every morning for 3 decades. I knew which lane to get in before every light on the route to work. I knew which checkout clerk worked Tuesdays at the Kroger on Montgomery Road. I knew the sound my furnace made when it was about to act up. I knew everything. And that knowing, that deep, settled, total familiarity with life is wonderful when you're building something, when there's a reason for the routine. After Margaret passed in 2009, the routine stayed. The reason didn't. I raised the boys, Connor and Daniel, threw myself into it, coaching their teams, helping with homework at the kitchen table, making sure they ate real food instead of whatever teenagers would choose left to themselves. That kept me moving for years. Then Connor went to college, then Daniel. Then they both had their own lives, and good lives I'm proud of. And I was in that house alone, still teaching, still showing up, still doing the thing I'd done for 34 years, but something had changed. The purpose had shifted. I've been pouring everything into a container that had quietly filled up and didn't need any more from me. I retired in April of last year. The school gave me a cake and a card signed by 112 people. I drove home, walked into the house, sat down in the kitchen, and it was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. That was retirement. 3 months of that, and I was watching YouTube videos about Thailand at 11 o'clock at night like a man looking for something he couldn't name. I want to tell you why Thailand specifically, because people always ask that. Why not Florida? Why not Arizona? Why not somewhere in America where at least you know how things work? The honest answer is the videos. I know how that sounds. A 66-year-old man makes one of the biggest decisions of his life based on YouTube videos. I understand the skepticism, but I'd been watching for 2 years. Not casually, it's forsaken me seriously. The way I used to research history for lesson plans, obsessively. Multiple channels, multiple perspectives, expats who'd been there 10 years and expats who'd just arrived, people who loved it, and people who'd gone home disappointed. I wanted the full picture, not the brochure. What caught me about Thailand, specifically about Chiang Mai in the north, was the pace. Every video, regardless of who made it, said the same thing in different ways. Life there moves differently. Not slowly, in a lazy way, differently in a human way. People had time for things. Meals were long. Mornings were unhurried. The city had energy, but not the frantic, grinding, nowhere to be, but I'm already late, energy of American life. I had spent 34 years in a school where the bell controlled everything. The idea of a life not controlled by a bell had become, I realized, the thing I wanted most. There was something else too. The cost of living. My Social Security covers my life in Chiang Mai with money left over. I'm not rich. I was never rich. A teacher's retirement is not a banker's retirement. But in Thailand, what I have is enough. Actually enough. Not scraping enough. Not anxious enough. Enough with room to breathe. In Cincinnati, that same check would have me watching every dollar and quietly dreading the next bill. The math wasn't complicated. The decision emotionally was harder than any math. I told my sons in August, sat them both down, Connor over FaceTime from Portland, Daniel in person. He'd driven up from Columbus. I said I was thinking about moving to Thailand after the new year. Connor's first reaction was, "Call, Dad." "What?" Daniel's was quieter. He looked at me for a moment and then said, "Is this something you've actually researched, or is this a YouTube thing?" I told him it was both. He nodded slowly. "How long have you been thinking about this?" 2 years, I told him. More silence, then Connor from the laptop screen. "Dad, you don't speak Thai. You've never lived outside Ohio. You're 66 years old. You'd be going completely alone." I said, "I know." He said, "So why?" And I said something that surprised even me as it came out. "Because if I don't go now, I won't go. And I think not going would be the thing I regret." Neither of them had an answer to that. Connor came around first. He called me 2 weeks later and said he'd been reading about expat life in Thailand, and it seemed more established than he'd realized. Daniel took longer. He's more like me. He needs to process things internally before he can say them out loud. He called me in September, said, I still think you're crazy, but I also think you should go." That was enough. I bought the ticket in October, one way. The moment it stopped being an idea and became something real wasn't when I bought the ticket. It was 3 weeks later, standing at the airport in Cincinnati at 5 a.m, with 2 suitcases, watching my gate number appear on the departures board. That's when my stomach dropped. That's when Connor's voice in my head got loud again. "What are you doing? What are you actually doing?" The flight from Cincinnati to Bangkok was in Chiang with a connection in Tokyo was just under 20 hours. 20 hours is a long time to sit with a decision you've already made and can't unmake. I watched 3 movies, tried to sleep, looked out the window at darkness over the Pacific and thought about Margaret, the way I still do when something big happens. Wondered what she'd think of this. Decided she'd think it was ridiculous and also exactly right, which was how she felt about most things I did. Bangkok hit me the moment I stepped outside the airport. The heat was the first thing. I knew Thailand was tropical. I'd seen the word tropical 100 times in those videos. I thought I understood it. I did not understand it. It was like walking into a wall. Not uncomfortable exactly, just impossible to ignore. Heavy warm air that immediately told your body, everything is different now. Everything you think you know about how a day feels, forget it. The second thing was the noise. Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi airport is enormous, and the roads outside are perpetual organized chaos. Taxis, shuttle buses, motorbikes threading through traffic with a confidence that should be alarming and somehow isn't. I stood there with my suitcases for a solid minute, just trying to figure out which direction to walk. A man appeared beside me. "Hey, well, where you go?" I told him I needed a taxi to a hotel near the airport. I had a connection to Chiang Mai the next morning. He pointed, walked me to a queue, made sure I got in the right car. I said thank you. He said, "Welcome to Thailand," and walked away before I could offer him anything. It was such a small thing. But standing there, 66 years old, more disoriented than I'd been since my first day of student teaching in 1989, that small thing landed harder than I expected. Chiang Mai. I'd chosen it specifically, not Bangkok. Too large, too fast, not the pace I was looking for, not the beach towns in the south. Beautiful, but tourist heavy, in a way that felt like a different kind of American life with better weather. Chiang Mai was the one that kept appearing in every video I found about long-term expat life. Old city surrounded by ancient walls, mountains visible on clear days, night markets and temples and morning markets, and a rhythm that people described consistently as genuinely human. I landed there on a Tuesday afternoon, rented an apartment I'd found online, a furnished one-bedroom in a mid-rise building about 10 minutes from the old city. Clean, modern, good internet, air conditioning that worked properly, a small balcony that looked out over the city rather than into another building, $700 a month. For context, my old house in Cincinnati, which I'd rented out to help with income, was bringing in $1,250. I was making money on the exchange without even trying. That first afternoon, I sat on that balcony and looked out at Chiang Mai. The city spread out below me in that particular way that Southeast Asian cities do. Low buildings and occasional temples and the green of trees everywhere. And in the far distance, the outline of Doi Suithae Mountain, the temple at its peak, just visible. I sat there for a long time, no phone, no laptop, no news, just the city and the ceiling fan turning behind me. And for the first time in I couldn't remember how long. I didn't feel like I was supposed to be somewhere else. That first afternoon was genuinely beautiful. What I'm not going to do is pretend the first week matched it. Because it didn't. And I think the reason so many people go home before they find their footing is that nobody told them the beautiful afternoon and the hard week can both be true at the same time. The first week. Let me tell you about the first week, honestly, because I think this is the part that people skip in videos like this, and it's the part that actually matters. Day 1, the balcony moment, genuinely good. Day 2, I tried to find a grocery store now. In Cincinnati, finding a grocery store involves getting in a car and driving 4 minutes. Simple, automatic. I'd done it so many times my body could do it without my brain. In Chiang Mai, I didn't have a car. I didn't have a scooter yet. I didn't fully understand the geography of my neighborhood. My phone's map kept losing signal. I walked in a direction that seemed right, ended up in what appeared to be a residential area with no shops, turned around, walked a different direction, found a 7-Eleven. And this is important. Thailand has 7-Elevens absolutely everywhere. And they are remarkable institutions that sell everything from fresh food to SIM cards to beer to things I still can't identify. Bought some things I recognized and walked home. The whole thing took an hour and 15 minutes. To buy groceries, I came back sweating, slightly defeated, and deeply aware that I was 66 years old and had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Day 3, I tried to take a songthaew, the red truck taxis that are the main local transport in Chiang Mai, to the old city. Got on the wrong one. Ended up somewhere I didn't recognize. Got off. Stood on a street corner in 34-degree heat with no idea which direction was home. A woman on a scooter slowed down, looked at me and said, You lost? I said yes. She pulled over, asked where I was trying to go, pointed me in the right direction, with such specific and patient detail that I actually found my way back. I thanked her. She laughed, not unkindly, and said, You okay? Chiang Mai easy to learn. Then drove away. 2 strangers in 2 days who helped me when I needed it and wanted nothing for it. I started noticing that pattern. Day 5, the loneliness arrived, not gradually, all at once, the way it does. I was sitting in a small restaurant near my apartment. Open air, plastic chairs, a menu with photos, which was the only reason I could order anything. Eating pad kra pao, which I'd pointed to because it had an egg on top, and I figured anything with an egg on top was a reasonable bet. Around me, families were eating together. A group of young Thai men were laughing at something on someone's phone. An older couple sat across from each other, eating in the comfortable silence of people who have been sharing meals for decades. And I was alone at a table for 2, with the second chair empty. Back home, eating alone didn't feel like this. In Cincinnati, I ate alone all the time. At my kitchen table, reading the paper, completely fine with it. Here it felt different. Here the aloneness had weight. I ate my food, paid, walked home, sat on the balcony, And for the first time since arriving, I thought seriously about whether Connor had been right. Not panicking, not crying, just a quiet, sober thought. Is this actually what I want? Or did I just need to want something badly enough to make a decision? And this was what was available? I sat with that for a long time. Didn't answer it that night. Day 7. I emailed Daniel. Not a long email, just yet week 1 done. It's harder than I expected and more interesting than I expected. I think those two things might be the same thing. He replied 4 hours later. That sounds about right. Keep going. 2 words. Keep going. I printed it out. I know. I'm 66. I print things. And put it on the refrigerator. Kept going. Week 2 was different. Not dramatically, incrementally. I found the local market. Not a supermarket, a real market. The kind that's been at the same spot every morning for decades. Vendors who show up before sunrise. Produce that. Was in a field yesterday. Fish that smells like clean water instead of a cooler. The first time I walked through it, I must have looked exactly like what I was. A wide-eyed American who had never seen anything quite like this and didn't know where to start. A woman at a fruit stall watched me for a moment and then, without me asking, held out a piece of mango, just held it out. I took it. It was the best mango I had ever eaten in my life, not exaggerating. Not because I was hungry or because Thailand was making everything seem better, because it was actually genuinely the best mango I had ever eaten. I bought a bag. She showed me, without being asked, which ones to pick for the next day and which ones were for right now. I didn't understand a word she said. I understood everything she meant. I went back to the stall every morning for the next 3 months. By the end of month 1, she knew my order before I pointed to it. By month 2, she'd started setting things aside for me. By month 3, she called me by a Thai nickname I couldn't pronounce correctly, and she seemed to find this endlessly amusing. That market became my first real routine in Chiang Mai. And routines, I was learning, were how a place becomes a home. Somewhere in week 3, I stopped doing the thing I'd been doing since I arrived. I stopped comparing everything to Cincinnati. And once I stopped comparing, I started actually seeing where I was. The comparison trap. I didn't know I was in it until I got out of it. For the first 2 weeks, without realizing it, I had been measuring everything against Cincinnati. The grocery store took longer. Bad. In Cincinnati, it took 10 minutes. The roads were confusing. Bad. In Cincinnati, I knew every route. The food was unfamiliar. Uncomfortable. In Cincinnati, I knew what I liked. I was using Ohio as the standard, and Thailand as the thing being tested against it. And then one morning, I don't know exactly when, somewhere in week 3, I stopped, not consciously, not as a decision. I was walking through the old city before the heat got serious, past the moat and through one of the old gates, and I noticed that I was just walking, not comparing, not cataloging differences, not calculating whether this was better or worse than something back home, just walking through an 800-year-old city in northern Thailand at 7 in the morning, watching monks collect alms and street vendors set up, and tuk-tuks navigate the narrow lanes, and a group of school children in uniforms crossing a street in a neat line supervised by a teacher who looked exhausted in the universal language of exhausted teachers everywhere. I was just this there, present, not performing being presence, actually present. And it felt like something releasing, like I'd been holding tension I didn't know I was holding, and it had quietly finally let go. The temple visit started by accident. I passed Wat Che De Luang one morning, one of the major temples in the old city, enormous, ancient, partially destroyed by an earthquake 5 centuries ago, and still standing anyway, and on an impulse I went in. I am not a religious man. I was raised loosely Catholic, lapsed by college, haven't been to church for things other than funerals and weddings in 40 years. But there was something about the temple that morning that stopped me. Maybe the scale of it. Maybe the age of it. The idea that people had been coming to this place for 500 years, and whatever they were carrying, they'd left some of it here and walked out lighter. I sat down on a bench in the courtyard. Tourists moved around me. A group of monks in saffron crossed the compound without hurry. I sat there for 40 minutes, didn't pray, didn't have some profound spiritual experience, just sat. And somewhere in those 40 minutes, I thought about Margaret. Not the grief of thinking about her, the other kind. The kind where you think about someone and feel the warmth of having known them rather than the wound of having lost them. I thought about how she would have hated the heat, how she would have complained about it loudly and specifically, and then adapted completely within a week, because that was who she was. How she would have found the mango vendor and become her best customer within a month. How she would have made this work better than I was making it work, and enjoyed it more loudly than I was enjoying it. And sitting there in that courtyard, in that heat, in that ancient place, I felt close to her. Not in a haunted way, in a good way. The first time in years that thinking about her felt like warmth instead of loss. I sat there until a group of tourists arrived and the quiet broke. Then I got up, walked back out through the gate, bought a mango from a street vendor and went home. Month 2, things I'd figured out by month 2, the songthaews. I knew which routes went where. I knew the right hand signal to flag one down. I knew that the price was fixed for locals and negotiable for foreigners, and that the gap between those two numbers wasn't as large as you'd think. The market timing, early means fresh, late means deals, 6 a.m. for the best produce, 8 a.m. if you want to take your time. After 9, the heat has already changed what's available. Which restaurants to trust? Not by reading reviews, by watching who ate there. If locals ate there in numbers, the food was right. If the menu was translated to 4 languages and the photos were laminated, skip it. How to communicate without language. This was the one I'd been most afraid of, and it turned out to be the least of my problems. The Thai people I encountered, almost without exception, had a patience for the communication gap that put me to shame. Pointing, smiling, phone translation apps, the occasional shared laugh at a mutual misunderstanding. It worked more often than it didn't. What I had not figured out by month 2, genuine friendship, acquaintances, yes, the mango vendor, the man at the coffee shop near my apartment who always added slightly too much sugar, and I'd stopped correcting him. The woman at the laundry place who'd started just taking my bag when she saw me coming rather than waiting for me to explain. But friends, us people to have real conversations with in English about things that mattered, that was still missing. And I was starting to feel the absence. The expat community found me before I found it. I was sitting in a small cafe in the Niman area, the neighborhood northwest of the old city, that has a higher concentration of coffee shops per square meter than anywhere I've ever been, working on a letter to Connor on my laptop, when a man sat down at the table next to me, looked at my Ohio State mug I'd brought from home, and said, "Buckeyes?" His name was Phil, 68 years old, from Columbus. Had been in Chiang Mai for 4 years. We talked for 3 hours. He told me what I needed to know that no YouTube video had told me. Not because the videos were wrong, but because some things can only be told person to person. He told me that month 1 feels like an adventure, month 2 feels like a test, and month 3 is when you find out whether you're staying. He told me about the Expat social group that met weekly, informal, mixed nationalities, anyone could show up. He told me which hospital to use, which insurance company most long-termers trusted, which neighborhoods had the most reliable internet for people who needed to do any kind of remote work or video calling. He told me without me asking that the loneliness I was probably feeling was normal, and that it didn't mean I'd made a mistake. It meant I was between the life I'd left and the one I hadn't built yet. That sentence. Between the life I'd left and the one I hadn't built yet. That was the most useful thing anyone had said to me since I arrived. month 3. Phil said that's when you find out if you're staying. He was right. But what I didn't expect was what would make the decision for me. It wasn't a place, it wasn't a person, it was a morning, month 3, a Tuesday morning. I woke up at 5:30 without an alarm. I'd stopped setting one about 6 weeks in when I noticed my body had found its own schedule here without me enforcing one. Made coffee on the small stovetop setup I'd bought at the market for about $12. Took it to the balcony. The city was just beginning. The sky was that particular dark blue that happens in the 20 minutes before sunrise when the night hasn't fully ended and the day hasn't committed yet. Doe Suta was a dark shape against it. The temple at the peak lit up, a small gold light on the mountain. A rooster somewhere below, the distant sound of a temple bell. The first motorbikes of the morning on the street beneath me. I sat there with my coffee. And I realized I hadn't thought about Cincinnati in 3 days. Not because I'd forgotten it, not because I didn't miss things about it. I missed Connor's laugh and Daniel's cooking and the particular smell of the school in September, that back-to-school smell that 34 years of Septembers had made feel like something important. But I hadn't thought about it, hadn't needed to, because I was here, fully here, not between two places anymore, just here. And I thought about what Daniel had said on the phone in September. I still think you're crazy, but I also think you should go. And I thought, yeah, both of those things were right. Let me tell you what the life actually looks like now, not the idea of it. The actual texture of an ordinary day. I wake up between 5:30 and 6, make coffee. Balcony. However long I feel like sitting there, no bell, no schedule, no place I have to be. By 7:30, I'm at the morning market. The mango vendor, whose name, after months of trying, I can now pronounce with about 70% accuracy, which she grades on a generous curve, has usually set something aside. I spend maybe 20 minutes there. Buy what looks good, talk without language, and somehow communicate. Back to the apartment, breakfast, real food, the kind I never had time to cook properly when I was working. Mid-morning, I walk. I've developed 3 regular routes through different parts of the city. The old city loop, past the temples, through the lanes, along the moat. The Niman route, coffee shops and galleries, and the particular energy of a neighborhood that's figured out how to be both traditional and contemporary at the same time. And the river route along the Ping River, to the east of the city where there are fewer tourists and more of what Chiang Mai actually is day to day. I've walked every one of those routes enough times that I know things about them. Which coffee vendor makes the best ginger tea? Which part of the moat the herons use in the early morning? Which lane in the old city smells like incense from the temple? And which one smells like the bakery that opens at 7? I know this place the way I knew Cincinnati, but different, because I learned this one deliberately, with intention, as a choice I made at 66 when I could have sat in a quiet house and waited for time to pass. The social life took longer to build than the routines, but it built. Phil's weekly expat gathering, I showed up the second week after I met him, and I've gone almost every week since. It's not a club. There are no membership cards or organized activities. It's just people who've ended up in the same city from different countries and different lives and have in common the fact that they chose something different. Americans, British, Australians, a German couple who've been here 8 years, a Canadian woman who teaches English online and has done it from 5 different countries in the last decade. I've had real conversations in that group. The kind that I hadn't had since Margaret, honestly. The conversations where you say what you actually think and the person across from you does the same and both of you leave slightly changed by it. Phil has become a real friend, the kind where you can sit in silence and it's comfortable instead of awkward, the kind where he says something and I know exactly what he means and I don't have to explain myself. I hadn't had that in years. Connor visited in month 4. He flew to Bangkok, took the train to Chiang Mai, arrived at my apartment at noon. with jet lag and skepticism and the specific energy of a son who has been worrying about his father and is trying not to show it. I took him to the market first. He spent 20 minutes at the mango vendor's stall trying everything she offered him and running out of ways to say this is incredible. I took him to Wat Chedi Luang in the early morning before the tourists. We sat in the courtyard where I'd sat in month 1 thinking about his mother. I didn't tell him that's what I'd done there, but I think he felt something similar. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I get it now." I asked what he meant. He said, "We apologize. Why you stayed? I get it." He went home a week later and called me from the Bangkok airport. Said, "I told Dad he was crazy for moving to Thailand. I was wrong." I said, "You weren't wrong. I was crazy. It's worked out anyway." He laughed. It was the best phone call I'd had in years. Daniel came 2 months after Connor. He's more internal than his brother. Processes things slower, shows less. He spent a day just walking with me. We didn't talk much, just walked my routes. He observed everything, the way he's always observed things, quietly, thoroughly, storing it away. On the last evening, we sat on the balcony with cold Singa beers watching the sun go down behind the mountain. He said, "You seem different." I asked how. He thought about it for a moment, said, "Less like someone waiting for something, more like someone who arrived somewhere." I didn't say anything for a while. Then I said, "Yeah, that's about right." I want to talk about the money for a moment because I know some people watching this are in the same position I was in. Decent retirement income, not extravagant, wondering if the math works. And Townkus, it works. My Social Security covers my life here with enough left over that I'm not watching every dollar. Rent, food, real food, the kind I'd pay a premium for back home, for a fraction of what I'd pay. Healthcare, I have international health insurance, and the private hospitals in Chiang Mai are genuinely excellent, modern, English-speaking staff. Costs that still shock me by how reasonable they are. Transport, the occasional trip. I'm not living extravagantly, but I'm not living anxiously either. And the difference between financially anxious and financially okay is not actually about the number. It's about whether the number matches the life. In Cincinnati, my number and my life didn't match. The life was more expensive than the income, and the gap would only widen. Here, the number and the life match. That match, that simple fundamental match, has removed a background noise from my life that I didn't fully realize was there until it was gone. People ask me now if I regret it, and I've noticed that I have to think about it for a second before I answer. Not because the answer is complicated, but because the question doesn't quite fit anymore. Regret assumes I'm looking backward. I'm not looking backward. It's been 14 months since I landed in Bangkok with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket and a ceiling fan I couldn't stop staring at. Let me tell you what I know now that I didn't know then. The first thing, and this is the one I wish someone had told me before I arrived, the hard part and the good part are not separate. I thought they would be. I thought there'd be a hard period, and then it would end, and the good part would begin. It doesn't work like that. The morning I sat on the balcony in week 1 feeling out of place, that was hard. The afternoon I went to the temple for the first time and thought about Margaret in a way that felt like warmth instead of grief. That was the same week. The day I got on the wrong songthaew and ended up lost in an unfamiliar neighborhood, that was frustrating. The woman who stopped her scooter to help a confused American find his way, but that was the same day. The loneliness was real. The freedom was also real, both at the same time, not alternating, simultaneously. And I think that's what nobody tells you. Not because they're hiding it, because it's genuinely hard to explain until you've lived it. The second thing, the version of this I'd watched on YouTube for 2 years was accurate. I want to say that clearly because I think people assume that the reality is always worse than the research suggested. It wasn't. The pace is different here, genuinely different. Not as a tourist, as a resident, as someone whose day has a shape that I built rather than inherited. The people are as warm as the video suggested. Warmer, actually, because warmth toward a passing tourist and warmth toward someone who shows up every morning at the same market stall are different things. The food is as good as the video suggested, better, because no video has figured out how to transmit the smell of a morning market or the specific pleasure of eating something excellent because it was fresh and local and cost less than $1. The third thing, I underestimated myself, not in a motivational poster way. In a practical, specific, documented way, I thought at 66 I would struggle to adapt. I thought the language barrier would be more crippling than it was. I thought building any kind of social life from zero in a foreign country at my age would take longer than it did. I was wrong about all three, not because I'm exceptional, because the assumption that adaptation belongs to younger people is wrong. Adaptation belongs to people who show up and try. Age determines a lot of things. That isn't one of them. Now let me ask you something, because I've been talking for a while, and I think this is the part where it should become a conversation rather than a monologue. If you're watching this and you're somewhere between thinking about this and doing it, what's the thing stopping you? Not the practical thing. The practical things are solvable. I know that sounds dismissive, and I don't mean it that way. But the visa, the apartment, the insurance, the bank account, those things have answers. Thousands of people have figured them out before you and documented how they did it. What's the thing underneath the practical things? Because for me, it was this. I was afraid that leaving meant admitting the life I'd built wasn't enough. That Cincinnati and the house and the routine and the 34 years, that it hadn't been enough. That I was running away from something. What I found out is that you can honor something completely and still need something different. I love my life in Cincinnati. I loved teaching. I loved raising my boys in that house. I loved the 34 years of September smells and the grocery store checkout clerk who knew my name. Leaving didn't diminish any of it. It just meant I knew the difference between a life that was finished and a life that was still going. The life in Cincinnati was finished. Not bad, finished. And this one on the balcony in Chiang Mai with the coffee and the mountain and the mango vendor who mispronounces my name and I mispronounce hers, this one is not finished. This one has more in it. And that's the thing I couldn't have known from a YouTube video. That's the thing you can only find out by getting on the plane. So if you're 65 or 68 or 71, and someone in your life has told you that you're too old for this, that starting over is for younger people, that the sensible thing is to stay, I'm not going to tell you they're wrong about everything. Starting over is harder at 66 than it would have been at 36. That's real. What I'll tell you is this. Harder is not the same as impossible. And the things you find on the other side of harder are worth the harder. The mango vendor. The temple at 5:30 in the morning with the mountain lit up behind it. Connor sitting in that courtyard saying, I get it now. Daniel on the balcony saying, you seem like someone who arrived somewhere. The Tuesday morning when I realized I hadn't thought about Cincinnati in 3 days and felt nothing but peace about it. Worth it, all of it. Worth every disoriented afternoon and wrong songthaew and sweaty, confused minute of the first 3 months. Worth leaving. Tell me where you are. Are you thinking about it? Have you done it? Did you try and come home? Are you somewhere in the middle, 1 foot in and 1 foot out? I read everything. And if you've got questions about the practical side of Chiang Mai specifically, the costs, the neighborhoods, the health care, the visa, the day-to-day, ask them. I'll answer what I know. What I can't answer, what nobody can answer for you, is the bigger question, whether to go. But I'll say this one more time, as plainly as I know how. If the life you're living feels finished and something else feels possible, the plane is real. The ticket is buyable And 66, it turns out, is not too late. Not even close.